Okay, so hello. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but a viewer from one of my videos sent me in his DS because it's broken and would like to see if I could get it fixed. So thank you very much, Ace. Here, this is the DS that I received. It looks pretty good. But the issue is, if we turn it on, we can see that what happens is that the bottom screen flashes white very quickly and then turns back off. Nothing happens on the top screen. Now initially when you see this issue, you may think that the main issue is going to be with the bottom screen, but in actuality, the problem is usually with the top screen. So let's turn it on again, and it's very consistent that the bottom screen just flashes on and then turns off. I always make sure that the battery can at least charge. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but as you can see, the light's on. That to me tells me that the battery is charging at the very least. If the battery was bad and if it was like a dead battery, then it would have done something different. I'll show you. For example, what would happen if you had a dead battery and you tried charging it. I mean, so let's get this open. So dead battery is basically like having no battery in here. And you would think that you could play your DS without a battery as long as you had it plugged in, right? Well, that would be wrong, actually. So here is no battery. That's what would happen if you had a dead battery. The charging light would go on and then go right off. Okay? So I know at the very least this is a good battery because when I plug in the charger, the charging light at least stays on. Okay? So that's always a nice, good, quick check to do before you do anything else. So, however, this is a case, so the battery is fine, and I am 100% sure what the issue is because for full disclosure, I already fixed it. This isn't the actual DS that was sent to me from Ace, but the other day I already took it apart, found what the issue was, and fixed it. So this is basically just a recreation of what I saw, and I'll show you what happened. And there's another issue. There was another issue with his DS as well. The other issue was that he had two. This is a common issue that I see a lot of people asking about, and that's on screws that you can't remove because they've been stripped. That is a difficult issue to get around because if you can't remove the screws, then how are you supposed to get the DS apart in order to take out the stuff that actually works? In his case, the two screws that that were stripped, so I couldn't remove them, were this top one and this bottom one. And so I'll show you what I did. Here is his actual top and bottom part. Well, both pieces of the bottom part. This is where the bottom screen would be. As you can see, I had to, if I get in closer, as you can see, I had to cut away from the top. If you have screws that are stripped, sometimes this is the only way you can get to them. And so, because these were the two screws that had, and see they're still in there because I can't get them out. And I don't know if you can actually see that, but yeah. So they're in there and they're completely stripped. I tried many things to all my usual techniques, which were pretty much useless in this situation. So my only option was to go from the top. And I did that using an X-Acto knife. Get an X-Acto knife, and what you do is, I'll just show you, not actually doing it, but you got to cut. I mean, it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to take one pass. You're going to have to keep going over and over and over and over it. And then I have another blade. This is a very useful blade to use. You could switch them out, and once you have that bit cut, you can use this to basically dig it out. Dig out all of the plastic here, and you're going to have a lot of shavings all over the place, so use like a good mat, and try not to cut yourself. Be careful, because you can easily cut yourself doing this. And then you also, well, if they're on this side, right? And so I had to do both up here and down here, because those is where the strip screws were. If they're on this side, then you see the screw would be right here, and so you'd have to cut this corner. And those are usually the only, out of all the screws, those are usually the most common, these three, to be stripped. I think the reason is because these are the tri-wing screws. You need to use a tri-wing screwdriver. It's different than a Phillips head. Phillips head has 4, and it's hard to, you can't really see it in the video, but you know what a Phillips head is. Tri-wing is like that, but only has 3, don't know what you would call them. It just has 3 things here, where a Phillips head has 4. Anyway, so I think sometimes if people are trying to remove these tri-wings with a Phillips, and it's not going to work, and really all that it would do is strip. Not saying that's anybody's fault or anything. It's just what I imagine what would happen. I'm not sure if that's actually what happened. Anyway, so once you do have, once I got to this point, I was able to at least break off the, see, this is the plastic here. This is supposed to be attached to this part. And once I was able to break this off, then even though the screws are still in there, I could remove this bottom piece and take the whole thing apart. So that's how you remove stripped, well, not how you remove the screws, but how you take the DS apart if you have stripped screws. Now, granted, once you get to this point, you may not want to use these pieces again for obvious reasons. I mean, you can still use them. There's something, I mean, you'd have to, I wouldn't recommend it, okay? So, and so luckily, I actually have a lot of spare parts. And so here's a spare, and I have other spare pieces. Well, everything on here, the original DS I was showing you is a spare, and which is what I'm going to use for to make the replacement. And so the only thing now is to figure out why the bottom screen is flashing on and off like it was. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this DS apart, and I'm not going to do it on camera. It just takes too much time, and I have videos showing how to take it apart, but I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to actually take this apart, and then because I haven't, even though I have fixed the issue, I haven't put it together yet. So basically I'm just going to take it apart, and then once I have it apart, we'll go from there. Okay, so as you can see, I have the DS apart. Here are all of the pieces, and here's the motherboard, and here is the top screen that we were having issues with before. And when I took it apart, I immediately saw what the issue was, and it was very clear that it was actually the top screen, simply because, not because of this wire. You see that this wire is broken. That happened taking it apart. It wasn't originally broken, and it wouldn't affect the screen anyway, because this is just for the right speaker here. If this wire is broken, you wouldn't hear anything out of this speaker, so, but the screen would still work. So this wire doesn't really matter. But let me show you the ribbon cable here. So usually this ribbon cable for the top screen is really fragile because it's always twisted like this, and the top screen is always moving back and forth like this because of the clamshell design here. As you can see, the top screen is constantly going back and forth, and it's wrapped up in this little barrel here, and sometimes the top screen catches on things and it tears and all sorts of. So this is, so typically there's, of all the DSs I look at, the top screen is a very common issue. But let's see if I can get in closer here. Well, it's not really. Can it focus on this? It's having a hard time focusing. I don't have the best camera in the world. But anyway, as you can see, the ribbon cable itself looks fine. I don't see any tears in the ribbon cable itself or anything, and the problem is down here on the connection part, and it's actually on the other side. I mean, it's really hard to see, but there's like burnout or something. I actually don't know what causes this on the connection here. This is what gets plugged into the motherboard, and so these are metal connections that make contact with the ribbon cable, and they get connected into this slot here on the motherboard. And so there's some burnout here. As you can see, you probably only see dark spots. It shouldn't be dark. Anywhere I tried to clean it, sometimes it helps if you clean the connections just to make sure it's not dirt or grime or like oxidation or something like that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll and I'll take like a cotton swab and I'll dip it into some non-acetone alcohol and just, this doesn't have any alcohol in it, just showing you for demonstration purposes, but I would scrub it as hard as much, not really hard, but you can't really get that. As you can see, it's kind of has something coming off. But and sometimes if that doesn't work, then I take a very fine grained sandpaper. Sometimes that helps to, and just kind of just go over it and make the connections shiny again. As long as the connections are shiny, you should be good, but there's, I don't know why, it's like the connections are just gone. I don't know how that happens. To me it looks like they get burnt out. That's why I call it burnout. I'm not sure if that's the actual term or not, but anyway, what the result is that this motherboard is completely useless, because I'm sure you can fix this by replacing the ribbon cable, but that is beyond my skill. So I tried replacing the this ribbon cable, and it's not easy, and a lot of times it's just a lot easier to find a replacement top screen, which is what I did actually right here. So I have a lot of spare parts because I fix a lot of these DS's. So what's nice is that I have some parts that I could just swap out, and so this is a good top screen. I've tested it, and I'll show you in a second. And also the ribbon cable is fine. As you can see, this is how the connections should look like. See how they're all shiny? They're all kind of shiny. There's no burnout or whatever, not like this one. So you can see that big dark spot. So yeah, not sure what causes that. All I know, that is not usable. You can't use it anymore. So we'll just replace it with this guy, and what we'll need to do is take the border off of here and place it on there, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. First, I want to show you how I test the top screen and make sure it's good. I don't like to, because you don't want to put everything together only to find out that the top screen isn't any good, and so I try to do the minimum first. And what I do is I have the motherboard with the bottom screen attached, and you also have to make sure you have this piece in. If you do not have this piece in, you'll see the DS will come on, but you won't see anything on either of the screens. And so this has to be attached. I detach it because it makes it easier to feed the cable through here, which you have to do at some point. And so it's easy to take on and off, and so, but a lot of times I forget to put it back on, and so that's all that does. And then what I'll do is I'll take the bottom part and I'll place the motherboard in there. I'll put the battery in, and then I'll attach the top screen. First off, without the top screen attached, see, that's what happened. That was what the issue was. before. That's why whenever I see a whenever I turn a DS on and the bottom screen flashes white, that's usually an indication that there's a problem with the top screen. So obviously this is what happens when there's no top screen. So basically with this top screen, the DS was essentially saying there's no top screen because I can't detect anything there. And so that's what was going on. But now we have a good top screen. We'll attach it. And you got to make sure that it's flush. It's all the way in. If it's not all the way in, then it's going to basically do the same thing. Then you close the black tab. And then what I'll do is I'll just turn it on, flick the switch, and it'll turn on. And so yeah, the main issue is the top screen. The bottom screen, everything else is fine. As you can see, the motherboard's fine. Just the issue with the top screen. So now let's see that's working. We can, and touchscreen works too, so that's always a good check. So now we can actually put everything together. And I'm not actually going to put it together on camera because I do have videos showing how to do that. But let's see, there's that, and I can show you how to, very quickly since I'm here, how to replace the border, because this one has the black border and this one has this is a rose, metallic rose color DS, and so this is a metallic rose border, and I want to essentially I want to use the same border here because I want it to be the same color, but I want to put it on this guy. And so this can be sometimes tricky, but the best way I found is doing it like this. First I'll put the bottom screen in, and this is usually one of the trickiest parts. You got to wrap up the cable very tightly because you got to push it through this little area here, but it's also good to have there's a metal tube here. There it is. That you need. A little metal tube. And you don't need it. So when you when you're pushing it in here. See, sometimes it can be tricky. It's better to put this tube in first. See. And kind of hold there. Sometimes they're just loosely set. And then you wrap up this cable, as tight as you can. And you push it through. Then grab the other side and sort of just work it out. There you go. So now that's in there. Now the next thing to do before we put the screen on, I should put these wires in. This is for wireless. And so that goes right here. And then push these, put it in its proper place. And then this one is the microphone. Place it right here. And make sure, because these speakers are magnetic, so make sure you don't have any of the screws attached to them. Okay, now once those are in place, what I'll do is I need to remove this guy. Here, I'll put this off to this side. And I do that by taking like this small flat screwdriver here and start flipping this little black tab up. You don't want to rip it off. You kind of want to be careful because this is on really well. It's kind of just, there we go. Now it just pulls right up. Okay, just put it off to the side. Now this one, so we want to do, you don't want to put it on here. You want to put it on here. Make sure that it's on really well. And it's sticky on the other side too, so you kind of want to stick that down. And you kind of want to be quick about this because you don't want dust particles to get on this guy. And this one was already sort of off. So now just double check, make sure there's no dust. If you do see dust, wipe it off. You kind of have to look at it at different angles because once we put it on, we don't want to take it off again. So that goes on like that. And then we could put the speakers on. Just real quick. And quickly turn it over just to make sure it looks good and you don't see any dust in there. I think I do see some dust in there, so I'm going to shut the camera off. I'm going to do it again and put the whole thing together. Okay, so here's the DS reassembled with the new screen, top screen. That has the same bottom screen because it was fine, and everything else is working. And I also put, because remember before at the beginning of this video, the major issue was that these two screws were stripped, and so I had to do this type of thing, surgery basically, from the top down, and not even to get them out because they're still in there, but just to get these two pieces apart. And so now I have two good screws in there. Remember, you want to use a tri-wing screwdriver on these two screws, also on the one that's hidden underneath here, and this black one on top. Those are the only tri-wing screws in the system. Okay, so now let's play a game. This is Henry Hatsworth. It's an awesome game. Lots of fun. And we'll turn it on. Seems to be working fine. Because, yeah, the only issue is really the top screen. Everything else is alright. I'm not going to do well. Oh. Anyway, hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. If anything, hopefully it was informative and not too boring. Anyway, thank you.